Michael McGinnis had his first transformational experience in his early 20s at a personal development seminar in California, discovering that he'd formed all of the limitations in his life through words of victimhood. Liberated and turning his life around, he moved to Central America, a successful entrepreneur, big wave surfer, and race car driver. But he continued to be haunted by an unfulfilled void and fell into suicidal depression, coming to the realization that true fulfillment inherently resides within. Today, he's an award-winning author. In his latest book, The Essential Revolution, Michael explores the importance of recognizing and revealing our spiritual connection while inside a system that has been fabricated to keep humans distracted and asleep. He's dedicated his life to serving humanity on a global level. Michael, take us back to where it all started. You basically had everything. You were a successful businessman, big wave surfer, race car driver, and then something shifted inside you.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. Yeah, that was, I grew up in the 70s. I was born in 66. I grew up in the 70s. And, the whole thing was that, the man needs to become a millionaire. You have to have this money and you have to have this. And it was really sort of pushed in my head from my father. And I think just society in general, it was just a normal theme. And once I ended up having that my first transformational experience when I was young. I was 22, and I ended up moving to Costa Rica because my limitations were gone. I was like, I can do this, and I did it, and then I could do that, and I could do this, and I did the doing, and I got the stuff from the doing, whether it was the tons of beautiful girls and girlfriends and all kinds of stuff and all the things you could possibly want in life. But there was still this like empty void feeling. It almost felt like it was in the center of my chest if I had to fill out where it was in my body. And I got to a point where I realized that even if I had more of whatever it was, more cars or whatever, more money, doesn't matter, more girls, I was still going to fill this empty void. And it actually led me to a suicidal point in my life when I was, I'm going to guess it was 2006, 7, somewhere in there, 2007, something like that. So I was in my 40s, and I was fortunate enough to have been sort of like bumped into this book called The Power of Now, which I'm sure you've heard of.
Oh, yes.
Eckhart Tolle. Yeah. And I listened to it, and it got to that part it was in the introduction where I was able to see that there was a voice in my head that was saying a bunch of stuff, but then there was this other thing that could observe the voice. And I was shown that, like, well, that's actually me. I'm the one that can actually observe the thinking. And for me, that was a massive thing, when I had never done any, we'll call it spiritual, whatever you want to call it, in my life. And it just I had a transformational experience, but that was more of a limiting belief, take or aware.
Yeah.
know? And so this other thing happens, and it's like, oh my God, you mean I'm not going to get anything more that's going to make me complete because I already am. Oh, this is amazing. And it just it was like this, like all these 1,000-pound things just lifted off my shoulder, and I was liberated and free and mentally and inside here and all kinds of ways. And it changed my life forever. And that was the second big transformational experience. And then there were some other ones after that. But yeah, it's about being present literally now, like right now. And people say it's so hard to do. I found out that it's actually easier to do once you really get this. It's easier to be present than to be not present. You can literally go from 90% of the time not present and always like, what's coming? Oh, I want this, or I don't want this that's coming, or it was so great back then, or whatever it is, or it was so terrible. You find out that it's so much easier to be right here, that you can shift the whole thing over to 10% not present and 90% presence.
Mm-hmm.
And that's And we all came here for this. It's available to everybody. Everybody can do it. It's your natural state, actually. We've all just been programmed out of this thing and to come into this place where of scarcity. I don't have enough. I need more. Yum yum. You know, and so that's what happened. And in that instance, I've had several big things happen, but that was one of them.
Yeah. Now, one thing often leads to another in a biography. What would you say? How did being a big wave surfer and a race car driver help you move into a spiritual life?
Well, I would say, it's experience, right? So we have these experiences, and we all came here to experience physicality. So I'm never one of these people to say it's bad to get hooked on whatever, because I did get hooked on. At one point, I was hooked on girls, sex. And there was one time I was never hooked on drugs. I was never, for whatever reason, just wasn't in my world, or alcohol. Really, I never really. I don't drink, and maybe when I was real young, I had it quite a bit, and we had fun. But it was never that kind of. But I did get addicted to experience, and I got addicted to getting big barrels. Surfing when you get in the tube. I have to explain that to people because they don't understand what that means. But that's like something that is undescribable. It's also undescribable to feel 1,600 horsepower of force of a car motor, and to have to actually press that gas all the way to the floor, which is, you think you're going to be able to do, but the first time you do it, a lot of times people, because of the G-force, you end up throwing up. Yeah. You get used to it. So these are all just experiences in the physical, and one can get, in many cases, and I would say all of us at some point get addicted to something here on planet Earth, whether it's shopping, whether it's, looking at the screen, or taking something to make us, to take us away from right now. And I was doing that a lot, and I don't regret any of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, and so I was able to see people say, but being addicted to surfing is a good thing. I would say being addicted to anything for me is not healthy for myself, and I'm not saying I'm completely addiction free. I can jump into YouTube and really get lost in a lot of things at times. And I would say, that would be something that at some point I'll probably move away from, but I don't, while I'm in it, I also don't say this is bad. I don't do that to myself, because I had a friend, she said to me, just know that when you're in your pattern of whatever it is, this habitual pattern, that source is also in that pattern as well, having that experience. So too is it as we come out of it and go, oh, that was interesting. So it's all experience, and it's all okay, and it's all perfect. And it's also perfect, like to realize that there's some moment that you're going to grow out of this when you're ready to go, okay, what else is there in life?
Yeah.
How many people do we know that, like, especially like when you get a little older like me, and you get we call it the afternoon of our lives, and we start to scratch our heads and we say, wait a minute, I have everything. I went out and played this game, and I did that, and I made this, I made that, and I surfed the biggest waves and whatever that I could, and had all the beautiful girls. Is this all life is? And my answer to you is no. That is a part of the experience. The biggest thing and the best thing and the thing that's coming for all of us, maybe not in this lifetime, but it is coming. And that is your spiritual awakening. That is literally at some point your ascension, which we don't know when and how that happens. And that's a very mystical thing to say, but we're all going back home. We're all Buddha. We're all Christ. We're all going back home, period. Yeah. And so that's when you get on that, we call it El Camino Rojo, like that's what the indigenous would call it, right? And that means you get on the road through your awakening consciously, like you're conscious of your being on that road. And that's the only thing that matters to you in your life. Mm-hmm. That is coming for everybody. Like I said, maybe not in this lifetime, but it's available to all of you. And it heals all addiction. It heals all strife, all problems, everything. Not that the problems don't exist. They're there. It's how you perceive them. And that comes along with your spiritual awakening. That makes sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Deepak Chopra or Eckhart Tolle, I think, said it, that we are spiritual beings, everlasting spiritual beings having a human experience.
I agree. And I think the important part about that for a lot of people to understand, and it's hard to tell somebody, you need to understand this and believe it, but if you can have faith and understand this, and I think that I know that the soul already knows. So sometimes somebody says something and you go, huh, if you get a huh, you got it. Now it's time to step into the knowing. So what I would say to that is step into the knowing that you are eternal. That thing that Eckhart Tolle and Deepak Chopra talked about is this essence of the spiritual being having experience in a physical body is eternal. You will never not be, period. This is going to go away as the sun is, the rock. This is a victim. It's all going to die. It's going to go to poop and it's going to turn into something else. And that's just the way that it is. But your essence of experience, there will be unexperienced for eternity. When you know that, you're liberated from the fear of death, which is our biggest program of all, right? As we know.
Yeah, absolutely. I had an interesting podcast with Mark Barnes the other day, who said a lot of people who get older, like from the age of the mid 50s going into 60, have a crisis of meaning. They think life starts when they go into retirement. There's this misconception that life starts when you go into retirement, and then these people have a crisis of meaning.
Yeah.
Once they reach retirement.
Yeah, and you'll see a lot of people, because they're in that crisis, they'll go out and they'll become volunteers at a dog shelter, or you know what I mean, because they're looking for meaning, and it is your nature to help. That's great, right? It's great that that's happening, and there's more you can do. There's more that you can do to fulfill yourself, because even then I see a lot of people that go there, they're still in the crisis because it's bigger. You've got to help yourself. You're helping these dogs, that's great, or you're helping these whatever you're doing in this, but it's you that's asking to be awake, to be awakened. It's the internal, the soul that's been kind of trapped down here with all the lies and the muck and the programs and all the things and your perceptions of everything that you've made up. It is the thing that wants to come out, and then you will be at peace. And whether or not you go and volunteer won't matter anymore, because you'll find it within yourself, and then naturally you'll be helping everybody anyways. You'll just eat anything. Anybody, hey, let me help. It's not you know what I mean? Like, because you'll be getting, like, you'll love it so much. However you end up, showing up like that, then it just becomes your natural way, and it is our natural way. It's always been that. You notice, like, we're in this world of division right now, and everybody's divided. But you know what? If there was a big disaster in the neighborhood, nobody would be saying, "I'm going to go over and help my neighbor if he's a Democrat or a Republican." That all goes away immediately, because this is an illusion, a lie. It's not true. We all love each other, as crazy as that sounds. Period. We don't think that we do, but in our heart we do it, and the heart comes out when those homes are all destroyed and people are inside, and you go and you help them out. That's your truth. That's who you are.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting that we as humans inherently do want to do good? I think that's part of our human nature. But now we have this society indoctrinating us that we need this and we need that, and we go into scarcity thinking, and we fall into addiction. I mean, not only addiction to substances, but especially addiction to beliefs and concepts.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, the disease of our planet right now, and we've got all kinds of new things coming up that they're just, I say they, and who's they? And I that's an interesting question if you think about it, right? Do I believe it's 40 men sitting around a round table? Not necessarily. I believe it's much bigger, much unfortunately much bigger, and it's an intelligence, and it is the opposite of capital love. And for some reason it has to be here, and it has many names, and which I don't even like to speak. But if you listen to a guy like Paul Levy, he talks about Watiko. And that's the Cree Indians' version of the darkness, and that it's actually here, as crazy as it sounds, no matter how hard it tries to mess us up, and it does. But we're going to wake up through that, just like so many people wake up through hardship and through their negativity, or for whatever happens, they have an awakening through that. They hit a bottom. Well, we're all coming towards the bottom right now, and that thing is pushing us, and that's why you see so many people wake up, not only to what's going on, like, oh, well, I see this now, oh, really, but also inside, like, well, how do I heal, because I got to heal right now because this hurts. And so getting to that place of the knowing that you're eternal, or putting faith into it. I don't know what it's like for me, I was jolted so hard that I went into a knowing instead of a belief. But I, I think the guy in our book, Dimitri, our main character, he offers that people, if that's all they can do is just have faith and belief, that's fine too, And if you're just hard set on no, that's okay too. That's your experience. You keep doing what you're doing,
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah. And this is the difference between experiential spirituality and religion. Religion based on concept, belief, and spirituality on the experience, on the knowing, as you say.
Yeah. And it's funny, like I agree with that 100%. And then I go, like I had the opportunity for whatever reason to go into a Catholic church. That was years ago. It was a friend of mine was getting married. And like I sit there and I'm listening. It's all in Spanish and everything. I speak Spanish and I'm listening to it. And there's this point where they say, now turn around and like say hi to your neighbor and hug them. And for me, it was so beautiful. Like that was like for me, I had my experience just like that. It was enough. Like I'll pull out of the beauty of these, even their religions, as I sit there. Like I'm a big fan of Joel Osteen, and so I get criticized about that all the time. Well, he didn't do this when he was supposed to, and he said this, and I don't care. He also speaks some incredible truths about empowerment and love, and so that's what I zone in on. What if I was blamed for all the things that I don't do right now? and you know what I mean? So yeah, even in the religion, you can find the beauty of it and the truth, and it's nice,
Yeah, that's part of our social sickness to be judgmental about everyone and everybody. Yeah. Explain a bit this concept of victimhood that you write about.
Yeah, well, I it's funny. I know I've repeated this before, but as I'm going through this whole process and everything, I started getting this thing like there are no victims, and then I watched Jordan Peterson one day say, "We're all victims," and he says, and it's true. I mean, like the glass is a victim with the entropy and the chaos and the destruction and the dog, the cat, the sun's going to go away. We're all, in a sense, we could say that, yeah. So we're all victims to these things that happen in life. We could say that. So how do we step out of the victimhood mindset, or even worse, wokeism, which is the parasitic victimhood triad, PVT, they call it in my book. The guy calls it in my book, and that's where you have the victim, and then you have the perpetrator, and then you have the supposed savior, the one that's like that stands up and wants to talk about it. It's just ego-filled disgustingness, and they've really done a number on humanity right now with this woke crap. So I really am I love to speak about that, and what I would say is that we all have things that have happened in our lives that are traumatic, all of us, everybody. Because, somebody yelling at you when you're a child is traumatic. It doesn't have to be that you got raped by your uncle. And it can be that too. It can be anything and all things. You find out that your mother really, she even says something, well, I kind of like how your brother does this better. He's much smarter than you. That could be traumatic for a child, They walk away and go boom, and it hits them. So we've all got some kind of trauma. What do you do with that, And you can either, it's like a choice, and you can either step into your victimhood and walk around and talk about your story for the rest of your life, or you can change your perception and say whatever happened had to happen, or you could say, that person that did what they did was doing the best that they could with what they had at the time. It's in those 7 universal truths to living a life worth living that Dimitri talks about in my book, and that's one of them. Is that we realize that everybody's doing the best they can with what they have in their tool chest, and so it's a choice. It really, everything is a choice. It's really interesting, right? And to be liberated like that, to know, okay, I'm choosing to be a victim. At least say it. Oh, I'm going to be a victim for the rest of my life. If you can do that, that's authentic. I can say, okay, good on you, go. But if you're gonna just or you can also choose to say, no, I'm going to perceive this differently. This is actually what happened. This happened for me, not to me. And I'm going to shift my perception so that it works for me in my life. Whatever happened, it happened, period. Yeah. Whether it was a government, your mom, your dad, your uncle, your boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, whatever it was, it doesn't matter. Your partner in business, they stole this. It's okay. At some point, there's a gift in it. Find the gift, Yeah.
And you're so right. We all have our issues. We've all had our family traumas. We've all had those life-changing experiences. But this victimhood thing is this sadness, this melancholiness of being in the past, not being in the here and now, the power of now. And the other aspect of it is, of course, entitlement. I'm entitled to because
I grew up, we didn't have that. I never knew anybody I didn't really see that until now. And it's like, wow, this is going to get real interesting in the world when those people become adults and they're sitting around and they're doing it now and they're in these workplaces, and wow, who knows where this is going to go. You're already starting to see it shift though, right? There's companies saying no to this ESG thing, and it's starting to happen because the world's not going to work like that. It's going to fall. It's really going to help this thing fall apart if it's going to keep on. And maybe it is. And I don't know what to make of it, but it is amazing. This entitlement thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, all tied into victimhood.
Yeah.
The same.
Well, I personally believe that this is very much part of building resilience, what you've gone through in life, and using that building of resilience to become more competent in life. But a lot of people aren't seeing that. They stay in victimhood, they stay in entitlement, and they want to stay there.
I really like that, what you just said. I'm gonna actually put that in my third book because it's also a way to like confront them and say, there's this thing called resilience, and you obviously you have not mastered that. And in order to live on planet Earth, I'm gonna do that. It just came to me right now. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's go into this shift in consciousness for humanity. Where do you see humanity going?
I know that the light will outshine the dark always, but we believe in the illusion of time because this is going away and I'm getting older and I'm going to die, and I just sure hope it happens before I die. Otherwise, it's going to get really hard, But the truth is, we don't know when. That's the thing, right? We could definitely argue that it's happening right now, that people are becoming more conscious. And in my story, Dimitri says the world is waking up, falling apart and waking up at the same time. And isn't that true, right? I mean, the more the opposite of capital L love pushes and pushes and pushes, other people wake up, and that's happening, and others stay in their slumber, and they need to be there too for some reason, and it's this thing that's happening. So, but will there be heaven on will heaven on earth be realized at some point in this thing called time? Absolutely, of course. And I think the most important thing is that it happens within now for as many people as possible, because then they will create the frequency that's adequate and what's needed for that shift to happen. So it's really an individual. It's about working on this first, period. That's a big thing that Dimitri stresses in the book. It's here, number one first, and then because as within, so without, right?
Yeah. So this is the essential theme of the book, The Essential Revolution, right?
It's a big part of the process, is that it has to happen in the individual first, and it is a part of the theme. Yes, a big part.
Yeah. Can you just elaborate a bit on that for our listeners to entice them to read your book?
Yeah, the book is interesting, right? Because it's by the way, this is like all downloaded. So like I'm in awe when I'm sitting there writing it. I'm like, and then I listen, it's on Audible. So I listen to these guys being read, and I read a part of it on Audible. It's a multiple narration Audible book. And so when I hear it or even go back and read it, I go, God, how did I do that? Where did that come from? And it didn't. I mean, I'm going to take 50% of the credit, and the other part I'm going to the unknown, the capital U unknown. It's written in a format of multiple narrators, and they're all going through life, and they're all meeting this person who has come to our planet, this very young man, to change everything. And they meet him in the most interesting ways, and then they become part of his team in a lot of ways, and in a way, and so we go through, as he explains these truths, universal truths of life and all these different forms. We see these people go through their process of not just their awakening, but the part before that where you say, no, this can't be, and so because that's important, right? Because the person that's reading it is also going to go like that. And so you see the character go through his denying and rejection and resistance, and you see him or her come out on the other side. So it's funny, you cannot read the book without it happening to you. That's why a lot of people start to read it, they get to a certain part, and someone get pissed and they throw it, but they always seem to come back and read it, and it helps them in life. And that's kind of what it is. And it's at least three books, probably more, but the third one I haven't started yet. I'll be starting it in November and December.
Yeah. So what made you write this as a book of fiction instead of nonfiction?
Because this novel was like dropped into my, like, it's just like, I have this voice that talks to me sometimes. The whisper, we call it in the book. You're going to write a novel. And I'm like, I don't know how to write. I don't even really read. What are you talking about? And it's like, here it is. And this story just goes down, like downloaded into me. And it's such a beautiful, perfect story. And I'm like, I don't know how to do this. And I tried it and it worked. I had some people say, wow, this is good. And I'm like, really? 3 chapters. And I kept going and got some help through editing. And yeah, it just went off. And it really was downloaded. It's really not an idea. More, I have to give a lot of it to visionary medicine as well. That a lot of stuff did come through in those experiences. So yeah.
Yeah. So, Michael, how can people connect with you? I'll put, of course, the links to your book in the show notes. How can people reach out to you?
Yeah, michaelmcginnis.com. And we could put that down there somewhere so they get the spelling right, because it's McGinnis. A lot of people could put a U in there. So, and then, we're going to keep doing these kind of things, putting out content, and I'm going to create a YouTube channel. We already have one, but I'm going to start creating some content where some more longer form stuff and some discussions and things like that.
Yeah, Michael, I really want to acknowledge you for your work. It's so necessary during these times where we are addicted to the 10,000 things in the external world, and a lot of people are searching for meaning and purpose. And such an important message you're putting out there. I want to thank you for that.
Oh, well, thank you. And thank you for having a platform like this where we can have these discussions. That's also, it's doing the same. So I really appreciate you too as well.
Well, thank you very much for being on our show, Michael.
Thank you. I appreciate it. We'll do it again someday. Hopefully, maybe when I come out with the third book.
Absolutely.